YouTube, welcome back to another video from Wtf Rc Cars. So, today we got the final one arrived, TR4 servo. So what we're going to do is, if we can get this removed, and I'll try and put it down without throwing it at the floor and smashing it to pieces. So, what we're going to be looking at doing today is removing this one, the final servo, and this is for the first and second gear, the one that I kept getting confused with when I was doing Revo video and kept mentioning first and second gear because I got this one stuck in my head, and that one was for forward and reverse. But we've got the TR4 servos in here. We have a Servos servo up front, and we're going to swap out the final TR4 servo and get it in the first and second gear shifting. Now, all we're going to be using out of this one, so they do come with the little packet with the servo arms in. Always worth keeping these because it does come with a spare screw as well, but we're not going to be needing any of that. And we're just going to swap it out, and it's going to sit in here. And these are a massive upgrade on the Traxxas ones. The Traxxas ones, I've had all endpoints and everything set on this as standard, and I think it was that one for the rear diff. Just one day decided to just get it working. Literally put the battery in, turned it on, and it would just as they do. But these are nice servos, plenty of servo cable, so we're not going to have an issue putting it through. But I'll get a nice close-up of this one so you can see what we're actually doing. So, let's crack on with getting it stripped and getting it fitted. Right, so hopefully we've got it all in focus, or as good as we can do. Start by, let's see what we've got first. So we're going to have to remove the battery tray because the cable runs underneath this if you want to keep it all nice and tidy. So you've got the two screws at the front of it, so we'll get them popped out, and hopefully the audio's nice on this. Still getting to grips with this new Sennheiser mic. Can't remember which one it is that I bought, but I'll do a video at some point showing you what kit we're using. Then you've got two more screws, one at either side here, and you get to them just under the wheel arches. They're not too bad to work on the TRX. So that's one removed from that side, and then if I can do it without spinning the TRX round, I think. Actually, let's see if we can get you a shot. So it's that one on both sides. So that one that you want out. Doing my best to try and make these guides so you can see as much of what I'm doing as possible. Because I know a lot of videos out there, they skip past what you'd think is the basic parts, but if you've never done it before, none of these are really basic parts. So, next thing we're going to open is radio tray. Now the part that I'm expecting being a little bit awkward on this, and as you see on mine I run without that cover on, because I don't run in water, so I'm not too bothered about making it waterproof. Or if it does go through water, it's never deep water that it's in. But the part that I'm expecting being a little bit awkward on this is going to be getting the servo wire through this little loop that's down at bottom here, through that. Because there's a lot of cables run through that, and it is a little bit awkward. So once we can get into the rat's nest that's the Traxxas receiver box, next thing we're going to want to do is remove this servo horn. So let's see. Now for this, I'm going to be using this driver, and it's a MIP, but it's a ball on the end rather than the straight cut. And I do find for getting stuff just off angle like this, they are absolutely fantastic. And I'm running the aluminium anodized servo ones on this car because they do give it a more positive feel. Right, so next thing we're going to be looking at doing, we need to find out, one, where this servo wire is fastened, and two, we need to work out which servo cable it is. Now if you've got the stock radio gear, it's a lot easier because you can just work out from the instructions which one the shift gear's in. But I'm running the FlySky, so I've rewired all this myself. So it looks like it's going to be that one. Let's just see if we can move it and make sure it is. Yeah, so if we follow it through, so it's the one that comes beneath. So on this particular one, it's this one we're going to need out, I believe. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is quickly get my Stanley knife, and I'm just going to pop these pins out just to make it easier to get this through out the radio tray and out through that loop that's on the two diff servos. And this is always a can be a bit of an awkward task. But if you see what I'm doing, all I'm doing is lifting these up. You lift the little tag up and then you can slide them out. And I forgot to put the phone on silent, and we've always got people messaging, which is all good. I don't mind helping any of you guys out if you get stuck. So that's the original plug out. So now we're going to work this cable out from the receiver box. And you have to watch these little plugs on the other wires because they can be really sharp. So what I find is easier is if you fish it out a bit at a time. And then you've got less chance of dragging it down one of your other wires and damaging them. And it should come out easier than if we leave the plug on. Now if you're never going to use this again, this servo, and you really don't care, you can just cut the wire and pull it out either side. So that's got a servo wire free. Now let's see if we can get somehow down to these two bolts that hold the servo in. without losing these plugs and wires and the little screws. As a rule, the TRX looks really complicated, but it's not that hard to work on. And this would be exactly the same procedure in TRX 4 or 6. Let's try not to get my DVB wire caught, wrapped up round the screwdriver. So, lastly, let's see if we can work out what's got this wire. It just tucks under. So you've got a tiny little clip there and it just tucks under it. So that's the original one removed. Now while we're in here, might as well use it as an excuse to get a bit of a clean. Get to the parts that you can't get to when the servo's in. Right, so we're going to want to get our new servo fitted. So if you can't remember which way round this goes, you can always position your servo and then see where the arm lines up. So it wants to go on that way. And by the looks of that, I think you'd get away with putting it in either position. But I'm going to fix it with a servo on that side so the wire loops around the back. Now if you push the cable down flat, you can just turn the cable and it'll go back under the original clip. So all I'm going to do now is get the screws back in place. And what I like to do is get it so it's nearly all the way screwed in and then get the other one in place as well. As you can see with these ball end drivers, they do make it quite a bit easier to get in at a weird angle. And you don't want to be over tightening these because they are just plastic, and also the threads are plastic that it's going into. So we ain't got to be too concerned about leaving a little bit of cable, excess cable sticking out. And then you just want to route it back where your other wires were. Now, if we come to looking at this one, you can see the signal wire is the one that's white. So, what I'm going to do now is just pop these wires out like we did with the other one. So if you just carefully bend these little tabs up, you can then slide the wires out, and it should make this next part a little bit easier, because what we've got to do is get it under there. Although I'm not even sure that it makes any difference putting these under or not. So if you carefully just wiggle the wires, you can get them to go through. And then you need to fish them back out at this side, which is no easier. there you have it. That's them fed through. Then what you can do, we'll be putting a tie wrap back on there once this is finished, or a cable tie, zip tie, whatever you want to call them. So once you've got the wire round to this side, we then need to get it back through into the receiver box. So if you carefully pop the wire through, then you can just grab the little pins and bring the wires through. Right, now what we're looking to do I'm going to get the wires together, make sure they're all flat, and then get your plug and then you carefully push them back in, push down the little connectors, the little snap pins, and then you've got your wire back together. And then if you look on this receiver, so all your white wires need to go to the same side. So if you just look, your signal wire is to this side. But that should get everything tidy. Just be careful with the DVB one if you're running FlySky radio gear, because it's easy to trap that tiny little wire. Right, so once we get that back into position, we can screw his lid back down. Making sure we're careful not to trap any wires. And you can tell when it's sat all the way down, it closes the gap. Right, so next thing we're going to have to do is power this up, and then we want to make sure that we've got no issues with his calibration of his servo. So if I just quickly connect that, and then connect the positive, so we shouldn't get alarm going off constantly.
Welcome to Noble.
Alright, let's make sure we've got our controllers set on the TRX. So if we power it up, and then we're using channel 5 to do the first and second gear. So as we did before, let's try and get you a good shot of this one. So we're using the trigger and it's channel 5, so we're going to go into his endpoints, we're going to go down to channel 5, and we're going to set as travel all the way down to 10 in either direction. That way we know we're not going to over move this little servo, because we don't want this to be stressing too far. So once we've got the travel set, we're then going to want to put the servo horn back on. So I find it easier to do this with not putting the screw back in. So at the minute we've got it in the full forward position, but we've only got it down to 10 travel, so I'm going to back it off to the nearest one. Let's see where it is. So if we then go to change first and second gear, you can see we've got movement, but barely enough. We want it on the high position, and then we want to add travel. And then what you might have to do is just rock the RC slowly backwards and forwards, just to make sure that it does come out. And then you back off till the point where it's no longer straining. Then if we change into the other gear, and then just rock the RC back and forward a little bit, make sure it's gone in. And as you can see, that's not all the way through. So then we just add a little travel, and then what we should be able to do is change gear without putting any extra stress on the servo. So then we can refit as servo horn, or the servo horn screw. And then we should, so we've got one gear without it binding up, and it'll pull it into the second gear without putting too much stress on the servo. So let's see if I can find some way of doing this without putting battery tray back in. You can see we've got us 2 gears without putting too much stress on the servo. So let's power this off, get the DVB wire out, shut the MB4 up because we don't want that being noisy. Right, so as final bit of tidying this up, as I say, you would, on some, you'll fit the bit that goes over there. I've got far too many wires coming out of it, so I'm not going to bother. And as I say, it doesn't really get used in rain and that, so I'm not too bothered about that, too worried. So we need a little tie wrap or cable tie. So you've got a little cable tie point there. So we can bring us wires through to keep them all safe. Then you can just cut that off to keep it tidy. And then the only thing remaining to do now is get the battery tray back in. Be careful not to catch that when you put it back in, or any of your other wires that you've got kicking about. And basically all we're trying to do is slide the 2 posts between the frame rails. clean the bottom of that tray off while running. And then you want to drop this back down. And the easiest way I've found of lining these back holes up is to get the front screw holes in line first. So you want these two in position, and then what I find it easier to do is just loosely drop these screws in, but don't tighten them. And then you want these two screws and there's one in that side, and then exactly the same in this side. And again, don't over tighten these because they're only into soft plastic. And there you have it, one TRX4, completely upgraded servos. So let's wrap this one up. Right, so that's the final TR4 servo done, and so we've got both the diff locks, so that's that one locked and unlocked and locked. We've got the rear one unlocked, locked, and we've got a sound system. We've got a whole load of lights. Not sure which ones we've got set to on. Yeah, they're rock lights. And then we have also our 2-speed. So we've got one gear and then the crawling gear. So that's all fully functional. So if you want to know anything more about any of the setup we've got on this, check out the TRX4 playlist. There's a whole bunch of things we've done. If there's anything in there that you'd like to know, pop me a question. If I've not already covered it in a video, I shall make one for you. So, thanks again for watching Wtf Rc Cars. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, share to friends and family. I'll catch you guys again in the next one.